Yuta Okkotsu fighting Sukuna, not really a surprise. But doing it inside of Gojo's body might be one of the most unexpected event turns I've ever seen in any anime. If you've been keeping up with recent news having to do with Jujutsu Kaisen, then you might have heard about Gojo and implications in the recent chapters that have been teasing to his return. Now, 262 has finally dropped, and those implications have led us to learning something that is pretty unexpected in the plot as we know it. That being Yuta Okkotsu becoming the next Satoru Gojo. Like, literally becoming him. Now, for those of you who might not know, I'm about to explain. In the newest chapter of JJK, we see Yuta has copied Kenjaku's body swap technique in order to take control of Gojo's body. Like they say, desperate times calls for desperate measures. In order to beat Sukuna, Yuta feels like he has to sacrifice his humanity in order to defeat him. And now that Yuta has Gojo's body, it seems that he has harnessed all his immense power in order to fight Sukuna. Now, this twist literally changes everything as we know it. But it makes us question this. Was Gojo just seen as a tool for Jujutsu High to employ? Or was he seen as an actual human? And this chapter reveals everything, with the Jujutsu Sorcerers students pretty much not really caring about Gojo and making it clear that they only looked at him as a teacher who can give them what they need to become stronger, diminishing a lot of significant emotional character moments in the series that ultimately led to the development of a lot of characters. Whether it's Yuji Itadori, Megumi Fushiguro, Maki Zenin, or Yuta Okkotsu, this chapter teaches us one thing and one thing only. Satoru Gojo is a weapon of mass destruction and a monster. This chapter makes it clear that Yuta had a lot of emotional attachment to Gojo. Not just because Gojo was his teacher, but because in a way, he's seen the sacrifices that Gojo has had to make to get to this level, and he kinda is the only one who understands why Gojo would sacrifice a lot of things in order to be at the top. The main one obviously being his humanity, but something else that also was revealed to us is how many backup plans the Jujutsu Sorcerers had in case Gojo lost. Remember a few chapters ago when it was revealed that if Gojo were to get as weak as Yuta or Hikari, he'd allow both of them to jump in? And the whole thing with Takeba and Yuta, which led to Yuta defeating Kenjaku? Now we know that, to be honest, we are at the final backup plan, with Miguel jumped in, I don't know why. Toto coming in, and a whole lot of other backup plans being used and quickly wasted. This is officially the endgame. No more excuses. Yucho versus Sukuna. One of the biggest questions asked in the fandom is, One of the biggest questions asked in the fandom right now is, will the current Yuta be on the same level of Gojo in terms of strength? And to simply answer that question, obviously not. There's a lot of nuanced factors going into this, and one of the biggest things that you should know now is that Satoru Gojo's understanding and knowledge on cursed energy and refinement was way more advanced and immense than Yuta Okkotsu. Not only that, this is Yuta's first time using the body, so why would the person who hosted the body initially be less good than the person who's using it the first time? It doesn't make any sense. This is just a dumb theory in itself. But Yuta's mindset and going into this is what you should focus on. Yuta's mental state is, yes, confident in terms of wanting to beat Sukuna, but outside of that, emotionally, he's going through it. Yuta is down to take on the burdens that his sensei Gojo would usually take on, and all sacrificing huge loads of his humanity and understanding of identity in order to win. These burdens I'm specifically talking about is Yuta wanting to kill Kenjaku. The main reason Yuta wants to be the one to defeat Kenjaku is because he doesn't want to have his sensei go through the same process of having to kill his best friend. Regardless of Kenjaku actually being Geto or not, he doesn't want to have his sensei go through the same process of having to see Geto's face and kill him again, which in all was the main reason why Gojo was sealed in the first place. And I know I said earlier that Yuta's not going to have enough skill and experience as Gojo did in order to fight Sukuna, but something he will have is memories. Now that we know that for Yuta to do this, he had to copy Kenjaku's body swap technique, we can go into the nuances of Kenjaku's body swap technique. There's a lot of things that people just blatantly ignore. One of them being that Kenjaku had knowledge of prior events due to him being in Geto's body. For example, we can go all the way back to the Shibuya incident. In chapter 133, page 16, when Yuji is fighting against Kenjaku, and Kenjaku says to Yuji, last year during the night parade of 100 demons, if the forces hadn't been divided between Shinjuku and Kyoto, he would have won instead of Okkotsu. which pretty much means that when Kenjaku had acquired Geto's body, he was able to look back at the memories and realize that Geto's plan wasn't really optimal to win. So now that we know this, we can theorize immensely. Yuta, having this prior knowledge, will maybe be able to see other ways Gojo has fought in, and not fight necessarily on his level, but try to, I guess, emulate or copy his fighting style in order to win. And now that he has Gojo's body, he has all of Gojo's techniques. For example, there's a lot of ways he can go about this, but I just hope that Yuta doesn't come in there fighting like Yuta because, well, you're dealing with a whole different entity here. Now that we've established the stage and that we're basically going to see a whole different Yuta, we can now start thinking about how Yuta is going to be in character and how he'll treat his opponent. Now, Yuta's always been sort of a nice guy. Unless the situation really calls for it, like a situation like this, he's always been quick to hold back, in a sense, or just not kill his opponents like Gojo does. For example, when he's fighting against Ryu, and the fight is pretty much done, Ryu asked Yuta if the points weren't the thing that were in the way, would Yuta have killed Ryu? And Yuta gives him a subtle smile, pretty much implying that he's not the type of guy to just off his opponents that he's fighting. Now, another example of this is when Yuta's fighting against Yuji, and well, he does kill Yuji, but he brings him back, kind of showing a reluctance to following that Jujutsu sorcerer code of always having to just dud off your opponent. Now we get to the dire situations, being Yuta versus Geto and Yuta versus Sukuna. We see that against Geto, Yuta is totally willing to kill Geto because of how dire the situation is and how formidable of a foe he is. Similarly, against Sukuna, it seems that now that he sacrificed his humanity, we're going to see a potentially more bloodlusted version of Yuta that we've ever seen before. Now we get to abilities. Yuta is going to have things such as Hollow Purple and Gojo's Six Eyes entirely, which will allow him to process information way quicker than he ever could in his normal body. When we're going into the optics of Gojo's Six Eyes and processing information, we're talking about things such as Gojo being able to process things in a second that would usually take a minute, and any possibility that you can ever think of. And with the chapter ending, it seems like Yuta is going to use Gojo's domain expansion, already outdoing the version of Gojo we saw in the Hidden Inventory arc who couldn't even use domain. Now that Yuta's here and he is Yujo, the pressure on him is super high and he has to deliver for the sake of Jujutsu High. Remember when I said in my Yuta's the Answer video, which pretty much shown that I knew something like this was going to happen all along? Gojo had been grooming him to become the next him, and this is the perfect moment and perfect scenery for him to finally take the crown as the next Satoru Gojo, if not just the strongest sorcerer of now. I think the main thing people are also missing was that this was Yuta's fate all along. With him having to endure the trauma of Rika and going through the whole Volume 0 thing, Gege had been establishing that Yuta's fate was to ultimately become the monster that we see now. Whether you love or hate this twist, I think one thing's for sure, JJK is finally exciting again.